I'd just like to tell you about my experiences and my mother's experiences and my auntie's experiences going through the same thing now. What's happening up in the Northern Territory. This happened in New South Wales. I'm 50 years of age, and I remember my mother and my aunties going up to get the rations, and it was so undignified, and it showed disrespect to my mother and father and my auntie. So we have to fight to get this stopped, and any other intervention that doesn't allow Aboriginal people the freedom that everyone else shares in Australia. Thank you.
This is not only completely unfair, it represents a form of apartheid. I mean, this is treating people who are involved in the same system in two entirely different ways. Nobody who supports the principles of the Racial Discrimination Act or supports any of the UN declarations on human rights could possibly support this. And one of our concerns particularly is that even though we've had a change of government, there still seems to be a lack of understanding about how this is actually only impacting on Aboriginal people. It is discrimination in its worst form, and to highlight just how silly this is, when the Sorry Day happened here in Canberra and a lot of people came from the communities, many of them arrived in town unable to actually go and purchase goods, food, while they were here initially when they first arrived, because they in fact didn't have the right documentation to access their quarantine payment. I know that the bureaucrats at a senior level right at the 11th hour did actually try to sort that problem out, and they had to go to Centrelink and actually say to them, you've got to give them some other form of currency for that quarantine payment so they can actually feed themselves while they're here in Canberra. Your government has actually invited them to come. It would be nice if people could actually feed themselves while they're here.
I think most people will know that the Greens opposed this legislation from the start. The bulk of the money spent to date, and I found this out in estimates 2 weeks ago, is spent on administration of the quarantining program. $72.4 million on administration. That's not going to help Aboriginal communities, that's on administration. $30.8 million on housing, and you think, great, but it's not on actually supplying new houses to Aboriginal people. That's actually building the houses for the government workers and surveying the land that they're taking control of. And they're just about to let a contract on that, I'm told. That is not helping Aboriginal people. No new child protection workers have yet been put in place. I'm told at estimates that they'll be put in place shortly. No new safe houses are yet to be put in place. I'm told that it'll be put in place shortly. We're now, 8 or 9 months down the track of a supposedly emergency situation, and yet the very things that are needed to address the issues, such as putting in place additional childcare workers, child protection workers, support for families and safe houses, are not in place. But we've managed to start rolling out the income quarantining, and we are now starting, of course, to hear the stories of the impacts that this is causing. And of course, as we can see here, we're handing out the government, on our behalf, Australians' behalf, and we need to be saying very loudly to the government, not in our name, that these are gift cards. The government at first denied that there were, when I asked in estimates, I was first told, no, there's not gift cards going out, but we all know these are gift cards. How insulting is that to Aboriginal people and Aboriginal communities that they get given gift cards to go and spend in stores? There's absolutely no doubt that this legislation is discriminatory, it's racist, as I've said before. It's racist because it's been exempt from the Racial Discrimination Act. It's applied indiscriminately, people have no choice, and people are suffering. And it's about time it stopped. The government says they're evaluating in July, the first 12 months of this intervention. Well, that that July can't come quick enough for me, because this needs to be reviewed now. The impact it's having on communities needs to be addressed now, not even in a couple of months' time. You have our Greens commitment that we will continue to oppose this discriminatory, racist legislation. We will continue to work to address the 17-year gap in life expectancy in Aboriginal communities, because that needs to be addressed, but not this way. Thank you, as I said, for inviting me. As I said, you have our pledge that we will keep fighting this legislation at every opportunity we can. Thank you.
The convergence and the apology were both fantastic developments. It was great to see tens of thousands of people out on the street, to see Kevin Rudd apologising on behalf of Parliament and on behalf of the Australian people about what was done to the stolen generations. That was fantastic. But let's think about why it happened. The main reason why it happened was that there was pressure from below over years and years and years for a better deal for Aboriginal people, a better deal for Indigenous people. It wasn't simply that Kevin Rudd is a nice bloke, it was that Kevin Rudd and the Labor Party were under pressure. The apology itself has spread that sentiment, that recognition that Indigenous people are being oppressed, that racism is alive in Australia, and that something needs to be done. Indigenous people are a fairly small proportion of the Australian population, yet they have huge numbers of allies.
Now, collective punishment is illegal under all kinds of international law, and it's unfair, and it's really horrible, and it's racist. In February we saw an amazing convergence of Aboriginal people from all over Australia to come to Parliament House and say, hey, we deserve better treatment than this, and they're certainly right. So I was really thrilled by that. I thought, well, okay, I was sorry I lived to see the invasion of Iraq. I was sorry I lived to see the invasion of the Northern Territory, but I'm damn glad I lived to see this convergence and see Aboriginal people working together to lobby for their own rights, because whatever you do to the most marginalised people, you're doing to all of us.
Thanks everybody for organising this rally today about the land grab that is going on in the Northern Territory under the auspices of our government. Shame that our taxes are involved doing this underhand thing.